Okay, the recording's on, so let's start this. Okay, so we are up to the first word of the daf. So yesterday we learned about whether or not if an egg was laid on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, if you're allowed to eat it on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. And the Gemara Paskin, Rav said that we Paskin that it would be usher, right? That was Rav. That was the one of the Rav al-Chumrah who says that the egg that was laid on the first day of Rosh Hashanah is usher on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. Amar Rabba. Rabba said, Meis b'Yom Tov Rishon. What if this is not Rosh Hashanah? This is any Yom Tov. What if Lo Yaleinu, someone dies on the first day of Yom Tov? The halacha is asku boy amamin. You should have a goy bury the mace on Yom Tov. However, the Yom Tov Sheni, if someone dies on the second day of Yom Tov, it's asku boy Yisrael. There, a yid is allowed to violate the Yom Tov to bury the person. Even on the first 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, where one might argue, because it's one day, but it is going to be allowed. Good morning, David. We're just at the third level, and we just learned that if someone dies on the first day of Yom Tov, they can bury him through a goy. If someone dies on the second day of Yom Tov, a yid's allowed to bury him. Even on Rosh Hashanah. Yes.
My grandmother died on the first day of Yom Tov, and they buried her on the second day of Yom Tov in Gibraltar. So they do that.
I assume she died in Gibraltar.
She died in Gibraltar. So
No,
I
I
don't know how they do it, but I thought it was weird.
I didn't mean to be funny. I know the only Levaya that I remember on the second day of Yom Tov, Shmai Reichman, died on the first day of Yom Tov. But they buried him on the second day of Yom Tov. They had a Levaya on the second day of Yom Tov. And I don't know if it was an official Levaya, but I remember the hearse there. He was right on the second day of Yom Tov.
Where is this?
This was here in Toronto at 567 Lawrence Avenue West. Mr. Reichman, Moshe Reichman's father was donating a Sefer Torah to the shul on Shavuos, and as he was dancing, holding a Sefer Torah under the chuppah, walking from his house on Dale Mount to the in the path in between the yard, he collapsed right there. I was right there. For me, it was exciting, but I was busy trying to chapeklach. So
Rabbi Kerzner's father was also buried second day Yom Tov.
So it says that you're allowed to bury al day yid. You don't even need to get a goy.
Don't
So
put
the
that.
Gemara says.
Yeah,
the Gemara says.
Burial, but you have to get the body there too. That
No.
drive and everything.
All of the see, we're going to get to that in a second. But all of the malachas that you have to do to bury the mess, a yid's allowed to do.
Okay, so to dig, I understand there's no issue with digging your safe, but to drive him to the
Why is digging a less of a malacha than driving?
I guess
It's harsh.
that's mamish the kavura versus
No, you're allowed to do everything. The shadow that discusses, there's a lot of extras, like you're not allowed to call the relatives, and the relatives aren't allowed to come. It means one person's allowed to go do it. So that's where this whole shiloh becomes a little bit sticky. That I want to address later on. That's right. That's right. So Zok to Gemara. Masha'enkin bebeya. But when it comes to Abeya, even though you're allowed to bury somebody on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, oh, they are yid. But Abeya that was laid on the first day of Yom Tov, we will not let you eat. So the egg is more chomer than the mace. Well, there were different svaras. Yeah, there were different svaras. Why was that? But Davar Sheish Materian only makes it that it shouldn't be batal b'roiv. It's not a reason why there should be a hakpad on the egg. It's only a hakpad on the egg if you look at it like it's a yom arichta.
All this color the mace that's involved, that's not involved by the egg.
So Nahardoyami, but the people from Nahardah said, Af Beitzah. So too an egg. In other words, an egg as well, we say it's a Sveika Yom of Rosh Hashanah as well. And it's not a Yom Arichta. And in fact, you would be allowed to eat the egg on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, like the Tut Staden we had yesterday. The Ma'adaitech. Why would you argue that you wouldn't be allowed to eat the egg? Because it's a Yom Arichta. Dilma Ma'avri Leila El. Maybe the Edom are going to come too late, and they're going to end up making the first day Kodesh and the second day Kodesh, which creates a one long day of Yom Tov. Is that why you're worried? And is that why you're not going to allow someone to eat an egg on the second day of Rosh Hashanah? In other words, you're in Chutz La'aretz. You don't know what happened in Eretz Yisrael. Maybe it's a Yom Arichta, right? So on that, Zokt, the Gemara, you don't need to worry about that. You know why? The Rabbi says, because Amar Chanina bar Kahana Amarav, it never happened that they added a day to El. There was 2 days in El. It never happened. So all this discussion that we've been having over here, it's like the Yom and they're going to add a day, it never happened. The whole sugi we just had now, it never happened. It happened once in the days of Ezra, and that was even before they ever made the Tikkun. So this whole Tikkun they made, that it's the Edom come in the Minchel or Mila, they don't accept it anymore. It never happened. The whole thing never happened.
I could hear.
So it never happened, something about it. So there's a very interesting thing that he spoke out, and that is there's those people who there was such a minute to blow shofar. There's 3 reasons why they're masber, why we blow shofar all of El. Right? One is to be moras for tshuva, right? One is, I think, to confuse the Satan, so he stopped the day before. But there's a 3rd reason that's brought, and that is so that we should make sure to get Yom Kippur on the right day. So if you start Rosh Chodesh El and you blow the shofar for 40 days, so that's going to be Yom Kippur, because the 30 days of El and the 10 days of Yom Kippur, of Tishrei. I'm not sure. So the thing is, that works really well if El had 30 days, because 30 plus 10 is 40, right? But if El doesn't have 30 days, what are you supposed to do, right? So there are those who learn, we don't do that, that you start blowing shofar already on the first day of Rosh Chodesh El. So you get the last day of Avin. And as a matter of fact, there are those who have a minute to blow shofar during the Seis Mechuvah. And Rav Moshe says, Rav Moshe Manchin addresses this, and he paskins that you have to follow your minute. And our minute is not to do that. Our minute is to start from Aleph El and not to blow shofar during your Seis Mechuvah. But Zok Rav Moshe, if you make a new kehillah, if you make a new besmedrash, and there's no pre-existing minute amongst the kehillah, amongst the spalim, you should set up the new shul to blow shofar from the last day of Av through Yom Kippur. I don't know any place.
Yom Kippur minus Erev Rosh Hashanah.
Morning, Eddie.
Right?
Morning, Rabbi Weinberg. What?
Yeah.
That's right. Minus Erev Rosh Hashanah. You don't have 40, but I guess good enough. You don't have Shabbos either, right? So that's what's practical. So it's very interesting. And you have to understand, but it never happened. It never ever happened that El was 30 days. Never happened. So, okay, so Zok Gemara back here. Amar Marzutra. This halacha that you're allowed to bury a yid, you're allowed to bury someone al yidei a yid on the second day of Yom Tov. That's only if the mace is going to start decomposing because of the length of time that the mace was left. It's going to lead to bizayin mace. But if there's not a problem with that, for instance, you're in a cold climate, avada, you're not allowed to bury the mace al yidei a yid on the second day of Yom Tov. You have to wait. Rav Ashi says, and it looks like the gimel is over there, and my rabbi used to always tell me that wherever the gimel is, that's what we usually pass like. Even if there's no danger of the mace starting to go bad, nami loy b'shinla. You don't have to wait. You're allowed to let a yid be involved in the burial of a mace on the second day Yom Tov. My timer, it's a very strong lesson we're about to learn. Yom Tov sheni legab mace kechoil shavu rabbanim. What comes to a mace, Yom Tov sheni is mamish kechoil. It's like a weekday. And
could I say a milsa betichas over here?
Please.
I don't know how true this is, but I heard it said the wife of Tavshilin Yontif, when her husband passed away, and she remarried again, but she made some kind of a derogatory remark about her second husband, whether it was Yontif and whatever it is, and she said, use those words, Yontif Sheni the Gabameis. It's Yontif Sheni.
So her second husband, the second Yom Tov,
is
is
Chayil.
like Chayil to make my first husband. Very good. Very good. It's good. Very good. So
I won't guarantee the truth about whether it's true or not.
But a good joke doesn't have to be true. I always say a good story doesn't have to be true. Shmuel told me that his grandmother, Shmuel Urban told me that his grandmother was married to two men, right? She married first her first husband, and he was Nifter, right? And then she remarried Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky.
Rabbi Yaakov,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So she got a bracha from my Rebbe once that she's going to marry a Gadol B'Yisrael. So she would always say, I don't know which one he meant. So Zok to Gemara, Yom Tov Sheni Lagabe Ameis Kechoyel Shavu Rabban.
And it makes no nafkamina, as you know, with my life, because Yom Tov Sheni Sheshuis has different rules than other Yom Tov Sheni.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yom Tov Sheni is not a suffer.
Oh, because we're counting.
know,
Oh, that's right. That's right. I hear.
There are different, I don't know, obviously not by a mace, but
That's
there are different halachas for how Yom Tov Sheni Sheshuis.
Wow. Okay, so it's Kachol Shuvriban. So this is enough. There's a couple of nafkaminas. For instance, if you have a choice, let's say you have a good, is it better to do it through a good? So that those who learn since it's Kachol Shuvriban, no, it's better to use a yid, bedavke, to bury a mace on Yom Tov Sheni. A and B is the yid allowed to be paid? Normally, you're not allowed to do. Maybe a volunteer could do it. I'll cover the mace. But are you allowed to work? Are you allowed to get paid for Shabbos work, for Yom Tov work? Legabi this Kachol Shuvriban, you're even allowed to pay the person. Talk to Gemara Viter. I feel the makers laglima. Even if you're going to cut and make a new beged for the mace. Now we're not talking about the tachrichim because that wouldn't be a fidel makers. That's a necessary part of the burial. But this is even for some type of extra beged that was made out covered. Maybe the U.S. flag to drape the coffin. Maybe to do something extra nice, or the makers like asa, or to cut down a hadas. They used to put a hadas by the mace so it would mask any malodor. Because the hadas smelled good. I don't know how good this works. I remember when I learned in the mirror, the European Bachim did not yet learn what a shower meant. And what they used to do is they used to pack on the cologne. I don't know if anyone remembers that. And I could tell you it didn't work. I could tell you it didn't work. Ravina. Ravina said, Va'idna de'ika chavri chashim. Nowadays that there are chavri chashim. What are chavri? Chavri are the Yidden don't like working on Yom Tov, right? The Goyim want to make the Yidden work. But you don't want to work on Yom Tov, so they don't work on Yom Tov. But the Chavri, if they see that you're burying a mace and you're making a lavaya on Yom Tov Sheni, they'll say, you can't work? I see you guys are working. So therefore, in such a situation, you should not make a lavaya on the second day. I remember when I started working, I once called a guy that I worked with, and I called him Friday afternoon at 1:30 in the afternoon, in the summer. And he says, Joseph, I am shocked that an Orthodox Jew is violating the Sabbath. And I told him, what are you talking about, Bill? So he says, well, so-and-so, every time I try calling him afternoon on Friday, he tells me it's Sabbath. He can't answer the phone. I said, really? He has a good job. I got to speak to his boss. Anyway. So that was
Yosy, some people might say this about the Koil Yingalad.
Yeah. So I'll tell him.
And it doesn't have to be Friday.
That's offside and a 3-stroke penalty, Mr. Rubner.
We're afraid that it'll cause problems. So it's interesting to note that halacha l'maisa, Reb Moshe paskins that you're not allowed to bury somebody on Yom Tov Sheni. Moshe is absolutely not. And Reb Moshe Feichen says, had they had refrigeration in the days of the Gemara, he has no suffix that they would have never made Yom Tov Sheni Kechoil Agabi Ameis. So Moshe
Even after a 3-day, even after a 3-day? So a Shabbos followed by a Sunday and a Monday?
Yes,
Like
because
Shavuot?
we have refrigeration. We have refrigeration. The bodies don't go bad.
I thought
I
Rav-
know, but I know Yoini's grandfather was buried here on a second day. I know some
So is
people were-
Maya Reichman. Because the Chassidish poskim hold you do. You're supposed to. The Debretina held you're supposed to. The Debretina even had a shaila if, like that Sola guys, if you're allowed to get a car ride back from the Vesa Kloris because you're allowed to go. So by the Chassidim, the meaning is that everyone buries on the second day of Yom Tov. It's only by the literature of Moshe you weren't allowed to. And they buried him. Yeah. That's what the Gemara says, right? That's what
That's not
I thought Rav Moshe,
right.
Yosy, I thought that Rav Moshe thought he had a problem. Not that he didn't have a problem, but he said that it could have been that we wouldn't have 2 days Yom Tov today. He has a raid about it. It was
Another thing he was concerned with Levias is because what happens is when you allow Levias, so then you're going to call your aunt from Pittsburgh to tell her about it, and the people are going to start coming, and the heter is just to bury the mace. It doesn't mean everyone's allowed to ignore Yom Tov. It means one needs allowed to do what he has to do to bury the mace. So Rav Moshe was very uncomfortable with it, but by the Chassidim they do it, and we have many cases where we're personally familiar with that there was Levias on the second day of Yom Tov. Listen, we shouldn't even know from such things. Just like we just said before, that there was never a time where it happened. The El had 30 days. There should never be such a thing. Eden should live forever. Shiach should come, and we should. Ubila Hashem Novas Lanetzach. Chumach Hashem Dim Ve'al Kuponim. Okay, so let's see the Heilig Gemara Vayter. So Tosha speaks about how it works nowadays. So Tosha says, if there was this problem with people that are going to see and force us to work, then better we shouldn't do it. So Tosha says, "V'hashta b'zman hazeh she'ein chavri." Nowadays, where we don't have this problem, where if they see us making a levai, they're going to force us to work. And Tosha is talking about the nowadays of the 1300s or the 1200s, right? Mutter, it's going to be mutter to bury on the second day. Now, what about what we had yesterday? That you can't undo a takana unless you have a greater bezdin. So Tosha says, don't say you need another bezdin to convene to undo the previous takana. The kiven de ze'atam mishum chashasha. The whole reason why it was set up was because of the chashash. V'arba chashasha over atam. And the Achronim say Torah that if when the chachamim make a takana, they actually declare the only reason why we're making the takana is because of this problem, then you actually will say that you don't need another convening of bezdin, and you will say that when the reason for the takana is no longer relevant, the takana will also be mutter. And Tosha means a raya. It used to be that mayim agulin were aser, shema nachashasam. But nowadays, it's not common to have poisonous snakes slithering around our homes. We drink from liquids that was left open overnight. We'll drink water that was left overnight. Even though they did make a takana, but we say that since they declared the reason for their takana, so now that reason is no longer relevant, we don't have to have it. However, Zok Rebbeinu Tam, even though technically nowadays you should be able to allow levais on the second day, the Rebbeinu Tam did not allow people to bury people on the second day of Yom Tov. There was a story in the city of Milan. Someone passed away on the second day of Yom Tov, and they wanted to bury him. The Gar Rebbeinu Tam was upset with them for wanting to bury this Yid on the second day of Yom Tov. And he sent to them, B'nai Baschar einam b'nai Torah. The people of Baschar, which is people that are referred to in the Gemara, who were not considered B'nai Torah, and they were chashuv mentioned, yet they weren't considered B'nai Torah for the purposes of letting them do something that was a kula on Yom Tov, because it might lead them to not respect Yom Tov as much. Ba'atem, and you guys am alone, you think you're better than them? Ba'atem B'nai Torah, Kedisha b'Shabbos, Shaloi likbar meis b'Yom Tov Sheni, you should not bury a mace on Yom Tov Sheni, Mishum delav B'nai Torah ninu, because they were not B'nai Torah, So Rosh Shiva Gadol Dor Yirei Shemayim, he could bury someone on Yom Tov Sheni because it won't cause him to lose respect for Yom Tov. But a regular guy shouldn't be able to do it. I don't think it should make a difference.
Maybe the day before, more.
It all depends on what's happening. Aval Ari Amar, the Re said that's not a right. The real you were allowed. So you see this machlokes as to whether or not you should bury someone on Yom Tov Sheni didn't start with a Moshe and the Devrashina. Aval Ari Amar, the Ein Zedim, and you can't compare. The Alinian Harbe Devarim Ashkechana the Einim B'nei Torah. You find Lagabi a lot of things that weren't B'nei Torah. These would be famous, and then and nevertheless, there are certain things where they are considered B'nei Torah. So the case was Chazanu, the Ga'afli Turmis, the Shalki Nachem. They're eating this vegetable that Goyim cooked, which is Shaila Bishalakim, and he said that you can't eat it. Turmis is something that you can eat raw. And we know if you can eat something raw, there's no problem of Bishalakim. They weren't B'nei Torah. But we don't have to worry about it because we are B'nei Torah. So you see how to apply who's the Ben Torah and who's not. Lagabe allowing certain kulas, it's not clear, and therefore Zaktari, maybe today you would be allowed to bury somebody on the second day of Yom Tov, and you don't say that we're not a Ben Torah, we're Ben Torah enough because we're not going to lose our respect for the Yom Tov. Okay, so that's what I wanted to bring up.
That's what the one where when somebody makes a measure, and you think, had you known that this was going to happen, would you have made the measure?
Right, that's the person.
It's the same thing. They're all psachim.
Rabbi Chil Amr, Dami, no comparison. The shiny hacha, the betzina, who oichel bevesa. That discussion was someone eating this food in his home. It was a question of bishalakim. But there's not a big publicity about it. So you see, there's a big machlokes here. But about Tosfos, should we allow burials on the second day of Yom Tov? Nowadays, there's also people who have to work. And if you make a levaya, it's going to end up causing them damage because then they'll be forced to work. Go in the Kabbalah Mas, there are different municipal jobs that they have to do this work. So they'll have a religious exemption if it's a legit exemption. The mace, if the government sees that the Jews do bury Mason on the second day, they're going to force their own employees, they'll be forced to do the other malachas. And therefore, it's better to play it safe and don't make levayas on the second day of month. Okay. Zok the Heilige Gemara weiter. Ravina, this is a very interesting story. Ravina have a Yosef had made her of Ashi. I think the gears have changed for Ashi. Ravina was sitting in front of Rav Ashi. B'shnei yomim tovim shel Rosh Hashanah. He was by Rav Ashi for Rosh Hashanah, and he was there. It was a Thursday, a Friday, and a Shabbos. And Ravina saw that his Rebbe Rav Ashi was sitting in a very bad mood on the first day of Rosh Hashanah on Thursday. He saw that he was sad, and you're not supposed to be sad, even if you're a Litvak. You're not supposed to be sad on Rosh Hashanah. You're supposed to be happy. Avada, you have to be concerned. You have to daven for a good din, but you have to be b'simcha, v'gilu b'ra'ada, because we have to be confident that we're going to be zoicha within, especially since our father is the judge. So it tends to work. It tends to work well, right? So he saw that he was sad. So Amar Leh, he asked his Rebbe, cheer up. Amai atziv mar. Why are you so frustrated? Why are you upset? Amar Leh, you know why? You won't believe this. So Yosuvi Erev Tavshilin. I forgot to make an Erev Tavshilin. So now I'm not going to have food for Shabbos. So Zok Ravina says, "Oh, big deal. Today is Thursday. Amar Leh, v'loitzav mar idna. You could make an Erev Tavshilin today on the first day of a 2-day Yom Tov. Milay Amar Rava. You're allowed to make an Erev Tavshilin on the first day of Yom Tov for the second day of Yom Tov, umasna, and you do it with a t'nai. How does this t'nai work? Rashi says, ha'idna, I am about an inch up from the skinny lines in Rashi. Ha'idna. So Rashi is b'Yom Tov Rishon, u'chamishi b'Shabbos. If the first day of Yom Tov was a Thursday, you could make an Erev Tavshilin. Val Tanai, and he does it with a Tanai. And he says as follows: if really today is not Yom Tov, and really Yom Tov is tomorrow, Friday, so then there's no problem. Because today is Chayil, I'm allowed to make an Erev Tavshilin on Erev Yom Tov. Right. But I want him allow me to go tomorrow as well. So I can make an Erev Tavshilin today so that I can go tomorrow. But if it turns out that the real Yom Tov is today, which is Thursday, and Friday is Chayil, then any tzarich lekach. Then I don't even need an Erev Tavshilin because you're allowed to cook on a regular Friday for Shabbos. So Zok Ravina to his Rebbe Rav Ashi, you could make the Erev today on Thursday. Not all is lost. Omer Lei, so Rav Ashi answered back, Eimer da Omer Rabba, when did Rabba say that you could make an Erev Tavshilin on the first day of Yom Tov? That's Mishnei Yom Tov Mishal Goliath. That's on a regular Yom Tov. But Mishnei Yom Tov Mishal Rosh Hashanah. But on Rosh Hashanah, where there's an argument to say that it's one long day, Mi Amar, would he agree to such a thing? But Amri Nardoi Avbeya Muteres. The Nardoi said, so I'm sorry, so Ravina answered back, what do you mean the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah is one day, and therefore you can't make this night? Ravina said Nardoi said Avbeya Muteres, meaning it's no different than any other Yom Tov Sheni, where on the second day the egg is mutter. If the egg was laid on day 1, you're allowed to eat the egg on day 2. So clearly, Rosh Hashanah is no different than any other Yom Tov where it's all about Tzveka D'Yoma. So Rebbe, why don't you make the Erev Tavshilin today on the Thursday? So when Ravina mentioned this, Rav Mordechai, who was also a Talmud of Rav Ashi, told Ravina, be quiet, that's not a good time. He said as follows, Amar Mordechai, Beferish Amar Limar, I heard Rav Ashi tell me Beferish, he doesn't hold of Nardoi. And he actually holds that an egg that was laid on Thursday, on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, would not be able to be eaten on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. So don't tell him that Rosh Hashanah is 2 days from the Nardoi, because I know the Rebbe doesn't hold of Nardoi. So therefore, he was upset he couldn't make Erev. What I don't understand is why didn't Ravina invite him for Shabbos? You don't have food, you invite him for Shabbos, right? I wouldn't have thought of making Erev. You don't have an Erev, so come to me for Shabbos. Mustama he did. Zog to Gemara Vayter. Itmar. I'm sorry? Itmar. Efrayach shenoil b'Yom. What if not the egg got laid on Yom Tov? The egg got laid before Yom Tov, but the egg hatched. The chicken hatched on Yom Tov. And now we have a chickie. So the question is, can I eat this chicken? Am I allowed to shech it and eat it? On Yom Tov, you're allowed to shech. So the Gemara says, Rav Amar Asher. Rav says, this chicken is usher to eat if it hatched on Yom Tov. Shmuel v'Temi Rabbi Yochanan Amar Mutter. You're allowed to eat this chicken, of course, after you shech. Rav Amar Asher. Rav says it's usher because it's muksa. This was not an oichel coming into Yom Tov. This was not an oichel, and therefore, even though I could shech it now, but it's muksa, it's not an oichel. Shmuel v'Temi Rabbi Asher muksu. Shmuel v'Temi Rabbi Yochanan Amar Mutter. It's mutter to eat this, and this is a bombadik chiddush that I don't quite understand. But I'm going to tell you over what it says, and we'll see how Rashi explains. Since this chicken changed phases, it had a transformation. A moment ago, when it was in the shell, it was a sheretz. You were not allowed to eat it. It popped out of the shell. Now, if you shecht it, it'll be kosher to eat. So therefore, since it transformed itself in that respect, that now you're allowed to eat it if you shecht it, it will also transform itself and shed its problem of muksa. And let's see what Rashi says. This is the fourth line down in the wide lines of Rashi at the bottom. Since at its birth, it goes through a metamorphosis. Now it could be shechted and eaten. While the chicken was in the egg, you weren't allowed to eat it. It was a sheretz. So therefore, it will also heal itself and shed its problem of muksa. The migo da askin laha. Migo that the chicken transforms itself from a sheretz to a kosher chicken, it transforms himself from muksa to non-muksa. It's magic. I don't know how it works.
More of a transformation than the egg coming out of a chicken.
And it's kosher.
Yeah.
That it's not muksa.
Yeah.
And it's more. It's noilat. Forget it. Usually noilat is a reason to make it usher. Here, the fact that it's
the egg was in the chicken before, it just came out.
Right.
Transformed.
No, we're talking about the chicken coming out of the egg. In this case, the egg comes before the chicken. It's a big chiddush. It's a big chiddush. Yeshua screams at Rashi and has a different shot, but the Achronim talk about this shot, about how to understand this. So Zok to Gemara. That's why Shmuel held Shmuel. So Amalei Rav Kahana, Rav Asi Rav. Rav Kahana and Rav Asi told Rav, you should agree to us that the chicken is going to be mutter. Why is that? Because v'chima bein zeh le'egel shenol b'yomtiv. If a mother cow gives birth to a calf, you're allowed to shech that calf on Yom Tov. So if I'm allowed to shech the calf that was born on Yom Tov, why can't they shech the chicken that was born on Yom Tov? Amar lahu. So Rav responded, there's a big difference. This calf, before it was born, had you shechted the mother, the whole animal, including the calf, the ben paku inside the mother, would have been mutter to eat. So that calf was an oichel even before it was born. It was an oichel agavimah. But the egg that hatched, before it hatched, it was not an oichel. So therefore, Zok Rav, you can't ask me a kasha there. So they asked another kasha to Rav. Uma ben zeh le'egel shenoiled min hatreifa. What if the mother was treifa? So if the mother was treifa and you shechted the mother won't be edible, and the child inside the ben peku won't be edible because it's treifa. Elamai, if the mother gives birth and now this child born, this egel born is not a treifa, there you could have a shechita. So this is something that was not muchan agavimai. Agavimai would have been usher to eat. It's only an oichel once it comes out. That's similar to the egg. Before it hatched, it wasn't muchan, and now it is muchan. By the calf, we know if the calf was born on Yom Tov, you're allowed to shech it and eat it on Yom Tov. So why not the egg? That was the question that Rav was challenged with. The Gemara says Shasik Rav. Rav did not respond to that question. So Pashas is a good kasha. Rav didn't respond. Amar Rabba v'Tamer Rabbi Yosy. So Rabba or maybe Rabbi Yosy said, "My time is Shasik Rav." Why didn't Rav shoot back? Rav had a simple answer that he could have shot back to say that you cannot compare. You cannot compare a egel shenel natrefa to a chicken that hatched out of an egg. Why is that? Leimalu, he could have said, that animal, the mother, even if it was a treifa, it was still oichel. It was animal food. It could have been fed to dogs. But Zok Rashi, an egg before that has a chicken inside it, before it hatches, no one would feed that to their dogs. So an egg is not an oichel, not for a human, not for a dog. But at least the animal that's a treifa is an oichel, so it's considered muchin because it could be served to an animal. No, it helps that it's not muksa. It helps that it's not muksa because when Yom Tov arrived, I didn't separate my interest from it because it's not relevant for anything. I'm going to be able to use it on Yom Tov to feed to my dog. Amalei Abaye said, what kind of answer is that? Hashta. The fact that it was muchen leklovim, the fact that it was only good to be used for a dog, why would that take away its status of muksa if you want to use it as human feed? Why would it work? Hashta, muchen le'adam, lo yav muchen leklovim. If something is on a much higher level of food, meaning it's much more connected to us because it's food that can be eaten by a human, nevertheless, we don't allow you to serve that to a dog because it's muksa l'gabe the dog. And we're going to show you an example where this is illustrated, but the Gemara is giving us an introduction. I'm going to show you a case where something was human food, it was mukha for humans, yet we still considered it muksa l'gabe a dog. And where do you see that? Itnan we learned, we had this Mishnah on the very first Amud of this Masechta, where we wanted to show a machloikis if there's a din muksa on Shabbos, and we wanted to say that the Stam Mishnah, Rebbe made a Stam Mishnah that there is no muksa on Shabbos. Right? Remember the Gemara asked, why is there muksa on Yom Tov and not muksa on Shabbos? So the Gemara said that Rebbe made muksa on Shabbos. He said there's no muksa on Shabbos. He passed like Reb Shimon because Shabbos is chomer, and we're not afraid that people will look at it lightly. But by Yom Tov, he wanted to be mechazak Yom Tov, so he said muksa is awesome. So this Beitzah was the example of Shabbos where muksa is mutter. Because it says mechatchen is hadalu and lefnei behema. That's not relevant to our discussion. You're allowed to cut loon in front of a behemoth, even though it's a tircha. But what is relevant to our discussion is that's an avela lefnei klavim. You're allowed to cut up an avela in front of klavim. What type of nevela? Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, nevela me'erev Shabbos asura. If it was a nevela before Shabbos, so then it's muchen leklavim. You're allowed to serve it. But if this animal was still alive before Shabbos and the animal pagered on Shabbos, then asura. Then it will be usher to serve this to a dog because it's muksa, because it's not menamuchen. So let's think about it. This animal before Shabbos was muchen la'adam. It was muchen la'adam because it was a live animal. You could have shechted it and you could have eaten it. Yet, if it dies on Shabbos, we don't say that it was also considered muchen leklavim because it's going to be muksa. So you see, the fact that it was human food does not make it that it should be not muksa because it's animal food. So if you hold that even the high level of connection where something is human food doesn't help lagabe making it non-muksa, lagabe giving it for animal feed, muchen leklavim have a muchen adam. You're going to argue that this child that was in the treifa, which was muchen leklavim, you're going to say that that's called muchen la'adam? Of course not. And therefore, it's logical to say that the egg you couldn't eat the egg. So Zok to Gemara, Amr lay in. You have such a kasha, I'm saying you're 100% right. That's exactly the way you said it, that's the way it is. That muchen la'adam is not muchen for klavim, but muchen la'klavim is muchen for adam. Which means
Not eating today?
Thank you very much.
Which means the animal that was a treifa before Shabbos, which is muchen leklavim, would be muchen la'adam. It would be considered muchen la'adam. So Zok to Gemara, why is that? Muchen la'adam la'yav muchen leklavim. If something was going to be human food, that's not called muchen leklavim. Just like we just learned in the Beitzah of Rabbi Yehuda said, the Shabbos it's usher. You know why? If something is good for human consumption, it will be removed from feeding it to a dog. So therefore, if it's designated to be human food, yes, it's not muchen leklavim, and therefore it will be muksa. However, muchen leklavim, if you have an animal that's treifa, that's pregnant, so this animal's muchen leklavim, have a muchen adam. We say that is muchen adam. You know why? Because the deity, the inish, akol midi the chazal. A person always wants to use the best use of any object. So if he has a mother that's a treifa, that's pregnant, we don't consider that muchen leklavim and not muchen adam. Because in his mind, he's thinking to himself, sure, right now the way it is, I can't eat it. But if this mother gives birth and the child is not going to be a treifa, sure, I want to use it for achilas adam. So therefore, the case of an animal that's a treifa that's pregnant, we consider that muchen la'adam, and therefore it's not muksa. Okay, it's beautiful, Gemara. Now the only thing that's a little bit difficult to understand is it says that you're allowed. Rabbi Yehuda says, of Shabbos asura in a more. So what is the question over here? If it's a live animal, the Gemara wants to say that it's going to be muchen la'adam, right? If it's a live animal, it's muchen la'adam. Question: how could it be muchen la'adam? You can't eat it while it's alive, and once Shabbos arrives, you can't eat it either because you can't shecht on Shabbos. And this Mishnah, we know, is not talking about Yom Tov, where it's muchen la'adam so you can shecht it. It's speaking about Shabbos. As a matter of fact, on the very first Amud of this Masechta, the Gemara brought a raya from here about a Shabbos issue. So the Tosfos' problem here is how could you consider this muchen la'adam? How can you consider this animal that was alive before Shabbos and died on Shabbos? How can you consider that muchen la'adam if a person could never have eaten it? Before Shabbos, it was alive, and on Shabbos, you can't check it. So Tosfos learns that although this Mishnah is talking about Shabbos, it's also telling us that the same halacha applies to Yom Tov. And Tosfos says it's from these words. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer in Hoysin Avela Me'erev Shabbos Asura. The Mishnah could have stopped right there and not add any information. But then the Mishnah adds the following words: Lefi she'ena min hamuchad. Those words of Tosfos are extra, and those are the Tana's way of telling us that even on Yom Tov, we're going to consider it eina min hamuchad. Okay, beautiful. So we were left off at the end with a kasha on Rav. Rav was asked the kasha, what's the difference between this egg and an egel shenoilod min hatreifa? And Rav didn't answer. And he didn't want to answer the answer that that Rabbi suggested. That why didn't he say that the animal that was born from a treifa was muchen agav imay leklavim, and this egg is not muchen leklavim, because an egg would never be fed to a dog. And Rav didn't answer the question, but that's what Rav says. Nevertheless, a chicken that was hatched on Yom Tov, you're not allowed to eat. Tanya Kavasa the Rav, Tanya Kavasa the Shmuel. We have a brisa that says, like Rav, that you're not allowed to eat this chicken on Yom Tov. You have a brisa like Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan that you are allowed to eat. Tanya Kavasa the Rav. Egel shenoiled b'Yom Tov. A calf that was born on Yom Tov, mutter is mutter. A froyach shenoiled b'Yom Tov. But a chicken that hatched on Yom Tov, also, u'mahefish ben zel azeh. What's the difference? Zeh muchen agav imay b'shchita. Zeh einei muchen agav imay, which was Rav's svara. The brisa speaks it out explicitly. Tanya Kavasa the Shmuel v'temer b'Yochanan that it's mutter. Egel shenoiled b'Yom Tov mutter. That froyach shenoiled b'Yom Tov mutter as well. My timer, the same svara the Gemara said earlier. Zeh muchen agav imay. Zeh matir atzmai b'shchita. Since the chicken, when it hatches, transforms, that before it was a sheretz, and now it's mutter b'shchita, it's also transformed that it's going to be considered minamach. Tana Rabban, a froyach shenoiled b'Yom Tov, a chicken that was hatched on Yom Tov. Also, you're not allowed to eat the chicken. Rabbi Lesben Yaakov Omer, af b'choil also. You're not even allowed to eat b'choil. When a chicken hatches, you're not allowed to eat it right away. Lefi shaloi nispas chu einav. Until the chicken opens its eyes, it's still considered a sheretz, and you're not allowed to eat it. We learned earlier that if the chicken is still in the shell, and you bust open the shell to take out their froyach, there everybody agrees it's a sheretz. It's only Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov who extends that and says even after the chicken hatches and it's out of the shell, it's still considered a sheretz until you reach the point that it opens its eyes. Correct, Gemara, we have an anonymous brisa. Let's see if we can identify who the Tana of this brisa was. It says in the pasuk, which are the things that are also to eat. And we learn from there, to teach us that birds that had not yet opened their eyes are also considered shratzim, and they would be also to eat. Come on, who would be the Tana of this brisa? So Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, as we just said, that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov holds until a chicken opens its eyes, it is considered a sheretz. I'm not sure. Let's see if Rashi says anything. I don't see that Rashi says anything either. I don't know what the connection is. I'm not sure. Let's see the head of Gemara weiter. It's a good question. Amar Avuna, Amar Rav. Interesting Gemara. Avuna said in the name of Rav, Bam Shel Chidush. Beya im Yitziasa, a beya, as it leaves the mother, meaning as it's laid, as it leaves the body of the mother, Nigmara, that declares the egg as being complete. Question is, what halacha is this relevant for? My im Yitziasa Nigmara. Exactly what halacha is Rav trying to teach us that when the egg leaves its mother's body, it's considered complete. Ilema, if he's trying to tell you a halacha in Hilchas Muksa, and he said, I'm sorry, I take that back. If he's trying to tell you halacha in Hilchas Basar B'Chalav, that while the egg is inside the chicken, it's a piece of chicken, not allowed to eat it with milk. But once the egg leaves the body of the mother, and it's called nigmara, so now it's its own new creation. It's no longer a piece of a chicken; it's an egg, and that is considered parrot. So in this particular case, the chicken came before the egg. So ilema imitziasa nigmara umuteres lachla b'chalav. If the point that Rav is trying to make is that up until the egg leaves the body of the chicken, it's fleishiks, and once the egg leaves the body of the chicken, it's pyre. But while the egg is still inside the mother, it's going to be usher to eat it with milk. In other words, it's fleishiks. But Tanya, we learned that that's not true. We learned the Beitzah says beferish that even a chicken that's found inside an egg is pyre. So that's not what Rav could possibly have meant. So the Gemara says maybe Rav meant something else. Maybe what it means, as Rashi explains, that when it leaves the body, that's when it's nigmara. And therefore, if it leaves the body before Yom Tov, b'choil, then there's no problem of achana de Rabbah, where the egg has to be completed before Yom Tov. The meal that you're going to eat on Yom Tov and on Shabbos have to have been completed before Yom Tov. But if the egg was only laid on Yom Tov, meaning it was nigmara on Yom Tov, then you have the problem of achana de Rabbah, and you're not allowed to eat this egg on Yom Tov. Is that what Rav wants to say? So that if you shech the chicken on Yom Tov and you find eggs in the chicken, it will be also to eat because of achana de Rabbah. We'll say achana de Rabbah because we're going to say that this egg was completed on Yom Tov. That's also not true. But Tanya, we learned you're allowed to eat them on Yom Tov and you're allowed to eat them with milchiks. So if you want to have a cheese omelet Yom Tov in the morning, you're allowed to use this egg for your cheese omelet. So you see clearly that even if the egg is inside, it's not a problem of Hachana de Rabbah. And if you want to tell me that this Beitzah is wrong, it's not a Libud Hilchasa. And if you're going to tell me that no, Rav is saying that in fact when the egg did not get laid before Yom Tov, it's Asher on Yom Tov, and that's the sheet of the Mishnah, but this Beitzah is not Kalacha, Zok Gemara, that's not true, because the Mishnah also agrees that even if the egg was found in the chicken on Yom Tov, it's going to be mutter. Hanami Tanina. We learned that as well in the very first Mishnah of our Masechta. Beya shenolda b'Yom Tov, be'shamay oimrim toichal, teachel, u'be'sil oimrim lo teachel. Be'sil el eat it. But he is only talking about an egg that actually was laid. Yat kan like peligi be'shamay u'be'sil ela b'noilda. There's only a machlokes between b'shamay and be'sil if the egg was laid already. But avol b'mei iman, they don't discuss what would be the halacha if the egg was still inside the mother and they found it inside the mother. There, divrei hakoil sharia. Everybody would agree it's mutter. And you want to tell me that Rav said that until the egg was laid, there's going to be a problem and you wouldn't be able to eat it on Yom Tov? The chitayman, if you want to say that Beisilil afilu b'mei iman nami asri, if you want to say that Beisilil, who said in our Mishnah that it's also to eat an egg that was laid on Yom Tov, but he also would hold that it's also to eat an egg that was not laid on Yom Tov, it's also to eat an egg that he found inside the mother on Yom Tov. But if that's the case, why didn't Beisil express his Isser, even if it's in the chicken? Why didn't Beisil express the Isser there? Why did Beisil only address the case when the egg was already laid? And the reason why the Mishnah expressed Beisil's opinion when the egg was already laid is like the Acha Koichin de Beishamai, to highlight the extent to which Beishamai is Mekel. Even if the egg was laid on Yom Tov, it's still going to be mutter, and there's not going to be a problem of a chag. But maybe Beis Hillel holds, in fact, that even while the egg is still in the mother, it's going to be usher on Yom Tov, and maybe that's who Rav holds like. So when Rav said his halacha that if the egg was not laid before Yom Tov, you cannot eat the egg, nor can you eat the egg if it's in the mother. Maybe that will be consistent with Beis Hillel. Zok Gemara, that won't work either. The walls are closing in on you. The Beitzah says, if one shechs the tarnagolos, by beim gemurais, and he finds beim gemurais, mutaras la'achlam b'yom tov, you're allowed to eat them on Yom Tov. Mani loy b'shamai. This can't be going according to b'shamai, because according to b'shamai, never mind beim gemurais inside the chicken, even if they're laid already and they're outside the chicken, b'shamai says they're still mutar. There's no problem with it. And below Beis Hillel, this won't be consistent with Beis Hillel, because you, Rav, are trying to argue that Beis Hillel holds that even eggs inside the mother are going to be Asr and Yom. So therefore, you're stuck, and your pshat is no good. And this brisa must be Beis Hillel. And in fact, Beis Hillel must hold that when the eggs are still in the mother, you're allowed to eat them, which means there's nobody who holds such a thing. Everybody agrees that if you shech a chicken on Yom Tov and there's eggs in the chicken, everybody holds you're allowed to eat those eggs. So what was Rav talking about when Rav said that the egg is completed after it's laid? It's not relevant to Parv because it's Parv even before it's laid. It's not relevant to Muksa because you're allowed to eat it in the mother. It's part of the mother. It's Mukhan La'eichel. So what Rav must have meant was something completely different. What he meant was if you take an egg out of a mother that died and you try to incubate it, it will never ever grow into a chicken. It won't work. But if the mother actually laid the egg and you incubate it, then maybe you'll get a chicken out of it. And maybe that's all I was saying. He was telling us a fun fact that an egg will not be able to produce a chicklet unless it was laid naturally. No such thing as a C-section. A C-section doesn't work by a chicken. A C-section would not net an afroyach that will live, but if it was natural, if the chicken laid the egg, again, if the chicken came before the egg and the chicken laid the egg, then it could grow. So therefore, so that's a very nice fun fact, but why is it relevant to anything halachically? So it's very relevant if someone's looking to buy this item and he got the other item. Is it a good sale? Once a purchaser went to a seller and he said, who has eggs that were laid properly and they were not taken out C-section? So the seller said, I have. And he gave eggs, the supplier gave eggs that were C-section eggs. They were eggs that were not laid. And now the purchaser wants his money back. Also, so the purchaser came to Rabami and said, I want you to nullify the sale to Mekatos. And Rabami's paskin with him. Amalu Mekatos Father. When Rabami said this to Mekatos, the seller must give you back your money and you give him back his eggs. It's Pashit. I asked for A and you gave me B. And the Achronim asked,
interrupt, unless I missed it. Why is this different than a ben pekua? Is it the nature?
You're asking me why an egg found inside a chicken would not grow a chicken?
No, I'm asking you.
Science behind it?
Not the same. A ben pekua, whatever we find in the mother's stomach, we considered it as one of the mother, ubar yerachimoi, and therefore it doesn't need shechting, and it has the same halacha.
That's true.
So
But the fact is, a chicken, an egg that was taken out of a dead chicken will not net a chicklet. Whatever's inside it is not going to survive.
As opposed to an upor, which may?
Is it possible to shecht an animal and find a live animal inside it? I believe it is.
I'm not comparing this right away to uber b'yarachimoy. Why is a chicken all of a sudden a new invention?
Because it has different anatomy. This is a scientific fact. He's saying, scientifically speaking, if you find a live animal inside its mother's womb, it's not a halacha shayla. It's alive. You can't deny it. It's alive. It's walking. It's breathing. It's eating. But if you take an egg out of a chicken and you try to get it to hatch, it will not hatch. He's not making a halachic statement. He's saying a fact. Maybe he was a chicken farmer and he knew that this is how it works.
Yeah, but it has to have a ramification for halacha.
The ramification is this question that we're discussing. If I wanted to buy an egg because I wanted to hatch chickens, and you gave me an egg that would make a great omelet, but I can't hatch chickens with it, then I have a right to get my money back. That's where it comes out. Halach l'maisa. Okay. So Rabami said it's a mekach tois. So the Gemara asked Pshita. So the Achronim asked, if I say a halacha, you can ask me, Kasha, why am I saying halacha Pshita? But if someone came to Din Torah and I passed it in the Torah, how could you say Pshita? I'm passing you Din Torah. So the Achronim speak about it. So Zok the Gemara, it's not so pashut. because maybe I can argue that the buyer didn't really want to raise chickens. He wasn't looking to start a chicken farm. He wanted to put it in the sunny side up. So why did he ask for a chicken? Why did he ask Badakra for an egg that was laid naturally? Rashi says it's more completed. It's more ripened, so to speak. So it's a better egg. He wants his sunny side up would taste better if the egg was laid than if the egg was not laid. So then it wouldn't be a mekach. I wanted to buy a higher grade egg, and you sold me a lower grade egg, and maybe then you wouldn't be able to get your money back. But all he would have to do is he simply charged me $1 for a more expensive egg, and really he should have only charged me 90 cents for a less expensive egg. He has to give me back 10 cents. But Kamash Malone, that no, I wanted to grow a chicken with this egg, and therefore this egg to me is useless. It's not worth 90, it's worth 0. And therefore, Rav Ami said you must give the money back and you can give the eggs back. Kamash Malone. And I guess we'll stop here. I want to wish everybody a wonderful Yom Tov. The Rebbeinu Shem should help. Just like the Gemara says about an egg, that it transforms itself completely from a sheretz to something that's kosher b'shchita and it's not muksa. So we should be able to go through the Rosh Hashanah, transform ourselves into Avnei Hashem, and we should be kavanim, not kavodim. We should transform ourselves to Bnei Hashem, where Hashem will do mitzvahs and ma'asim tovim, and the Rebbeinu Shem will take care of us like children, and will give us chol milah d'meitav. We should have big ashpois of ruchnis and gashmias. We should have such a flood of ruchnis and gashmias that it should overflow ourselves, and it should be mashpia everybody around us. We should always be able to help everybody around us with ruchnis with the gashmias.
Are we learning?
Thank you.
Are we learning?